Al-Fatiha. Al-Fatiha, meaning the opening, is the first surah of the Quran and consists of just 7 verses revealed in Mecca during the early period of Islam. It holds a unique position as the only passage Muslims must recite in every unit of their 5 daily prayers, meaning devout practitioners repeat it at least 17 times each day, making it arguably the most frequently recited text in human history, with billions of daily recitations worldwide. The surah contains 3 main elements: praise and glorification of God, acknowledgement of His sovereignty and mercy, and a direct supplication asking for guidance along the straight path. Islamic tradition refers to it as the 7 oft-repeated verses, and considers it to encapsulate all major themes found throughout the Quran in condensed form. The structure moves from addressing God in third person to direct address, then to a plea for guidance away from the path of those who have earned anger or gone astray. Scholars note its liturgical function mirrors opening prayers in other religious traditions, establishing it as the essential foundation of Islamic worship and spiritual practice. Al-Baqara. Al-Baqara, the cow, is the longest surah in the Quran with 286 verses, and was the first major revelation received in Medina after the migration from Mecca around 622 CE. The surah takes its name from the story of the Israelites commanded to sacrifice a cow, found in verses 67 to 73, though this narrative occupies only a small portion of the text. Revealed gradually over several years, it addresses the newly formed Muslim community with comprehensive guidance covering theology, law, history, and social organization. Key sections include establishment of the Qibla direction toward Mecca for prayer, detailed laws regarding inheritance, marriage, divorce, commerce and charity, and extended passages addressing Jews, Christians, and hypocrites within the community. Verse 255, known as Ayat al-Kursi, or the throne verse, is considered by Islamic tradition to be the most powerful single verse in the Quran and is widely memorized for protection and blessing. The surah also contains stories of previous prophets including Adam, Abraham, and Moses, linking the Muslim community to earlier monotheistic traditions while establishing distinctive Islamic practices and beliefs. Al-Imran. Al-Imran, the family of Imran, contains 200 verses revealed in Medina and focuses significantly on Mary, mother of Jesus, and addresses Christian theological claims about Jesus' nature. The surah is named after Imran, identified in Islamic tradition as the father of Mary, connecting the narrative to the broader Abrahamic tradition while presenting distinctly Islamic interpretations. Verses provide detailed accounts of Mary's miraculous birth, her upbringing in the temple under Zechariah's care, and the virgin birth of Jesus, whom Islam reveres as a prophet, but explicitly denies as divine or the Son of God. The text directly addresses Christians, inviting them to monotheism and rejecting Trinitarian doctrine through reasoned theological arguments. Historical content includes extensive discussion of the Battle of Uhud, fought in 625 CE, where Muslims faced defeat after initial success, with verses analyzing the causes and providing spiritual lessons about trust, patience, and divine wisdom. The surah emphasizes unity among believers across different faith communities, calling Jews, Christians, and Muslims to common ground in worship of one God, making it a foundational text for interfaith dialogue while maintaining clear Islamic theological positions on contested doctrines. An-Nisa. An-Nisa, the women, comprises 176 verses revealed in Medina and addresses women's rights, family law, and social justice in unprecedented detail for 7th century Arabia. The surah was revealed following the Battle of Uhud in 625 CE, which left many widows and orphans requiring legal protection and economic support within the newly established Muslim community. It establishes specific inheritance rights, guaranteeing women portions of family wealth, a revolutionary concept in a society where women were often themselves considered property and inherited by male relatives. Detailed regulations cover marriage contracts, divorce procedures, waiting periods for remarriage, and protection of orphans' property from exploitation by guardians. The surah permits polygyny, allowing men to marry up to 4 wives, but only with the strict condition of equal treatment, with verse 3 stating if one cannot be just, then marry only one. Verses also address modest dress, gender relations, and the testimony requirements in legal matters. The revelation occurred during a critical period when the Muslim community needed clear legal frameworks to organize society, protect vulnerable members, and distinguish Islamic practice from pre-Islamic Arabian customs that offered women minimal legal standing or economic independence. Al-Ma'idah. Al-Ma'idah, the table spread, contains 120 verses and is considered among the final major revelations received in Medina, likely around 632 CE, shortly before the Prophet Muhammad's death. The surah addresses dietary laws, establishing clear distinctions between halal permissible foods and haram forbidden substances, including pork, blood, and improperly slaughtered animals, while permitting food from Jews and Christians. It takes its name from the story in verses 112 to 115, where Jesus' disciples request a miraculous table of food descend from heaven as a sign and festival, showing parallels with Christian Last Supper traditions, while presenting a distinctly Islamic interpretation. Verse 3 contains the statement, "Today I have perfected your religion for you," which many scholars consider among the very last verses revealed, marking the completion of Islamic law and practice. The surah extensively addresses covenants and treaties, emphasizing the sanctity of agreements and establishing ethical guidelines for warfare and peace. Significant attention focuses on relations with Jews and Christians, sometimes called people of the book, inviting them to Islamic monotheism while acknowledging shared prophetic heritage. Legal content includes regulations on ritual purification, hunting during pilgrimage, and retaliation laws, consolidating the comprehensive legal system that would govern Muslim community life. Al-An'am. Al-An'am, the cattle, consists of 165 verses and holds the distinction of being revealed entirely at once during a single night in late Mecca, unusual since most surahs were revealed gradually over extended periods. As the longest Meccan surah, it presents comprehensive theological arguments for monotheism and against the polytheistic practices prevalent in 7th century Arabian society. The text methodically refutes idolatry through logical reasoning, natural signs pointing to a single creator, and narratives of previous prophets who faced similar opposition from their communities. A significant portion recounts Abraham's journey from questioning celestial worship of sun, moon, and stars to recognizing the eternal creator beyond creation, serving as a rational model for rejecting polytheism. The surah takes its name from passages condemning superstitious practices involving cattle, where pre-Islamic Arabs would dedicate certain livestock to deities, impose arbitrary prohibitions, and engage in rituals Islam categorically rejected. Extensive discussion of natural phenomena, including alternation of day and night, growth of vegetation, celestial movements, and animal creation, serve as evidence for divine design and power. The revelation provided embattled early Muslims in Mecca with intellectual and spiritual resources to withstand persecution and maintain faith despite intense pressure to abandon monotheism and return to traditional polytheistic worship. Al-Araf. Al-Araf, the Heights, contains 206 verses revealed during the late Meccan period and presents sequential narratives of 7 prophets sent to their communities with warnings that were rejected, resulting in divine punishment. The surah takes its name from verses describing Al-Araf as a barrier or elevated place between paradise and hell, where certain souls will stand, able to see both destinations, but not yet assigned to either. Extended passages recount Moses confronting Pharaoh with miracles, including his staff transforming into a serpent and his hand glowing white, the magician's conversion when recognizing true divine power, the parting of the sea, and Pharaoh's ultimate drowning. Other prophetic stories include Noah warning his people before the flood, Hud sent to the tribe of Ad destroyed by fierce winds, Salih and the she-camel miracle to Thamud, punished by earthquake. Lot's community destroyed for their transgressions, and Shu'aib calling his people from dishonest commerce. Each narrative follows a consistent pattern. Prophet sent with clear message. People reject and mock. Prophet warns of consequences. Divine punishment destroys the rejectors while saving believers. The surah served to encourage early Muslims facing persecution in Mecca by demonstrating historical precedent where truth ultimately prevailed despite apparent weakness, while warning Meccan polytheists that their rejection could lead to similar fate as these destroyed ancient communities. Al-Anfal. Al-Anfal, the spoils of war, comprises 75 verses revealed in Medina shortly after the Battle of Badr in 624 CE, Islam's first major military victory, where approximately 313 Muslims defeated a much larger Meccan force estimated at nearly 1,000 warriors. The surah takes its name from the opening verses addressing disputes over distribution of war spoils and booty captured from the defeated enemy, establishing that such wealth belongs to God and the Prophet to distribute according to divine wisdom rather than individual claims. Detailed analysis of the battle emphasizes that victory came through divine intervention and discipline rather than superior numbers or equipment, with Islamic tradition holding that angels assisted the outnumbered Muslims during combat. The text provides foundational principles for Islamic warfare ethics, including prohibitions against treachery, requirements to honor treaties, treatment of prisoners, and conditions under which fighting becomes obligatory or permissible. Psychological dimensions receive attention as the surah addresses the Muslims' initial fear facing a larger force, their reliance on divine support, and the morale boost this unexpected victory provided to the nascent community. Instructions on military discipline, unity in battle, and proper distribution of captured resources established precedents that would guide Muslim military conduct in subsequent campaigns and conquests throughout Islamic history. At-Tawbah. At-Tawbah, the repentance, contains 129 verses revealed late in the Medinan period, around 631 CE, and uniquely lacks the opening Bismillah phrase, "In the name of God, the most gracious, the most merciful," found at the beginning of all other surahs. Scholars attribute this absence to the surah's harsh tone addressing treaty violations by Meccan polytheists, and its thematic continuity with the preceding Surah Al-Anfal, suggesting it may have originally been considered one extended text. The revelation addresses the aftermath of Mecca's conquest and establishes principles for dealing with those who broke treaties, giving polytheists 4 months to either accept Islam, leave peacefully, or face military action. Significant portions criticize hypocrites who claimed faith but avoided military obligations during the expedition to Tabuk in 630 CE, where Muslims prepared to face potential Byzantine aggression in the north. The surah granted exemptions from military service only to those with genuine hardship, while exposing those who invented excuses or pretended illness to avoid jihad. Verses establish ongoing obligations for warfare against those who break covenants and persecution of Muslims, while simultaneously providing detailed conditions for peace treaties and protection of those who seek refuge. The text reflects a period when the Muslim community had achieved military and political strength, necessitating clear guidance on treaty law, warfare ethics, and accountability for those claiming membership while shirking community responsibilities. Yunus, named after the prophet Jonah, contains 109 verses revealed during the late Meccan period and distinguishes itself by presenting the only example in prophetic history where an entire community believed and was saved from destruction. The surah recounts how Yunus, sent to the people of Nineveh according to Islamic tradition, grew frustrated with their rejection and departed before receiving divine permission, later being swallowed by a large fish or whale as consequence for abandoning his mission prematurely. While in the belly of the creature, Yunus repented with the famous supplication remembered in Islamic tradition, and God commanded the fish to release him onto shore. Remarkably, During his absence, his entire community had genuinely repented and believed, making them unique among all peoples mentioned in Quranic narratives who typically faced destruction for persistent disbelief. The story emphasizes divine mercy, the power of sincere repentance, and second chances even after apparent failure. Beyond the Yunus narrative found primarily in verses 98 to 99, the surah extensively debates between believers and disbelievers, presents natural phenomena as signs of divine power, and addresses arguments against resurrection and afterlife. Parallels with the biblical book of Jonah exist, though Islamic tradition places the events in Mesopotamia and emphasizes different theological lessons about prophecy, mercy, and community-wide redemption. Hud, comprising 123 verses revealed in late Mecca, presents multiple prophet narratives including Noah, Hud, Saleh, Abraham, Lot, and Shu'aib. Following a consistent pattern of prophetic warning, community rejection, and divine punishment. The surah takes its name from the prophet Hud, sent specifically to the ancient Arabian tribe of Ad, described in tradition as powerful people living in the region of Al-Kahf, characterized by sand dunes and advanced civilization. According to the narrative, the people of Ad were known for their physical strength and architectural achievements, but became arrogant and refused Hud's monotheistic message, leading to their destruction by a fierce, prolonged windstorm. Each prophetic story within the surah emphasizes consequences of pride, rejection of divine messengers, and the inevitable fate awaiting those who persist in disbelief despite clear warnings and signs. The narratives serve to encourage Prophet Muhammad and early Muslims enduring persecution in Mecca by demonstrating historical precedent where truth ultimately prevailed despite apparent weakness, and where arrogant opposers of prophets consistently met destruction. Archaeological debates continue regarding the historical existence and location of Ad, with some researchers pointing to ancient ruins in southern Arabia, while others consider the accounts primarily theological rather than verifiable history. The surah's structure creates cumulative emotional impact through repetition of the rejection punishment cycle across different communities and eras. Yusuf contains 111 verses revealed during late Mecca and uniquely presents a complete, continuous narrative within a single surah, telling the entire story of Joseph from youth through reunion with family decades later. The opening verse describes it as the best of stories, and the surah follows Joseph's journey from favored son thrown into a well by jealous brothers, through slavery in Egypt, false accusation and imprisonment by Potiphar's wife, rise to power through dream interpretation, and eventual emotional reunion with his father, Jacob, and repentant brothers. Islamic tradition emphasizes Joseph's beauty, integrity, and patience through extreme trials including betrayal, enslavement, false accusation, and wrongful imprisonment lasting several years according to commentaries. The narrative parallels the biblical account in Genesis chapters 37 to 50, but includes distinctive Islamic elements, including extended dialogue, emphasis on Joseph's absolute trust in divine plan, and his forgiveness toward brothers who wronged him. Scholars note the surah's sophisticated literary structure with foreshadowing, dramatic irony, and character development unusual in Quranic narratives that typically present prophet stories in fragments across multiple surahs. The complete story served to console Prophet Muhammad during persecution by demonstrating how apparent tragedy and injustice can be part of divine wisdom, leading to ultimate vindication and success. Themes include jealousy's destruction, patience during trials, forgiveness, and recognition that divine planning supersedes human scheming. Ar-Ra'd, the thunder, contains 43 verses with scholarly debate regarding whether it was revealed in Mecca or Medina, as it exhibits characteristics of both periods including theological arguments typical of Meccan revelations combined with legal references more common in Medinan texts. The surah takes its name from verse 13, which states that thunder glorifies God with praise, presenting natural phenomena including lightning, rain, and storms as signs of divine power and design rather than random occurrences. Extended passages describe the water cycle, how rain falls from clouds to revive dead earth and produce vegetation, how rivers flow through valleys, carrying beneficial water alongside foam that dissipates, creating metaphors for truth versus falsehood, where lasting benefit remains while worthless material washes away. The text emphasizes balance and proportion in creation, including the establishment of mountains, rivers flowing through measured channels, and the precise alternation of day and night through Earth's rotation. Descriptions of paradise promised to the righteous include gardens with flowing rivers, perpetual shade, and peaceful existence, contrasted with the fate awaiting disbelievers. The surah addresses those who break covenants after establishing them, sever family ties, and spread corruption, warning of accountability in the afterlife. Various classical commentators note the surah's sophisticated arguments from natural observation, suggesting careful reflection on creation leads rational minds toward recognizing a purposeful creator rather than attributing order to chance. Ibrahim contains 52 verses revealed in late Mecca and focuses on the prophet Abraham's supplication when he left his wife Hagar and infant son Ishmael in the barren valley of Mecca, according to Islamic tradition. The surah recounts Abraham's prayer, asking God to make the desolate location a place of security and worship, to provide sustenance for the inhabitants, and to raise from their descendants a community devoted to monotheism. This narrative establishes theological foundations for Mecca's sacred status in Islam and connects the annual Hajj pilgrimage directly to Abrahamic tradition, with Muslims believing Abraham and Ishmael constructed or reconstructed the Kaaba as the first house of worship dedicated to the one God. Abraham's gratitude for receiving children, Ishmael and Isaac, in old age receives emphasis, demonstrating divine mercy and the fulfillment of prophetic lineage. The surah also presents arguments Abraham used against polytheists, employing logical reasoning about divine power, creation, and the futility of worshiping powerless idols unable to benefit or harm anyone. Extended passages contrast prophets who brought clear guidance with communities who rejected them, drawing parallels between Abraham's opponents and 7th century Meccan polytheists resisting Muhammad's message. The text served to establish Mecca's religious significance predating Islam, while demonstrating continuity between Abraham's monotheism and the final prophetic message, countering claims that Islam represented innovation rather than restoration of original worship. Al-Hijr. Al-Hijr comprises 99 verses revealed in late Mecca and takes its name from the region inhabited by the Thamud people, identified with the archaeological site of Madain Salih in northwestern Saudi Arabia, featuring elaborate rock-cut tombs and structures. The surah recounts how the prophet Salih was sent to Thamud with monotheistic message and produced a miraculous she-camel as a sign, with the animal granted specific rights to water and grazing that the community eventually violated by killing her, leading to their destruction by earthquake, according to Islamic tradition. The ruins at Madain Salih remain visible today, and Islamic sources report that Prophet Muhammad passed the site during his journey to Tabuk and instructed companions to hurry through without lingering, treating it as a place of divine punishment and warning. Beyond the Thamud narrative, the surah addresses creation of humanity from clay, Satan's refusal to prostrate to Adam, and his subsequent expulsion from paradise, and the story of Lot's people destroyed for their transgressions. Verse 9 contains God's promise to protect the Quran from corruption or alteration, a verse frequently cited in Islamic theology regarding textual preservation across centuries. The surah also addresses messengers sent to various communities who mocked them, emphasizing that divine truth ultimately prevails regardless of initial rejection, providing encouragement to early Muslims facing ridicule and persecution in Mecca. An-Nahl. An-Nahl, the bee, contains 128 verses revealed during the late Meccan period and extensively catalogs natural phenomena as signs of divine creative power and wisdom. The surah takes its name from verses 68 to 69, which describe how God inspired the bee to build homes in mountains, trees, and structures, to consume various fruits and nectars, then produce honey from their bodies that contains healing properties for humanity. This observation of bee behavior predates modern understanding of their complex communication, navigation, and the antimicrobial properties of honey verified by contemporary science. Beyond bees, the surah presents an extensive inventory of divine blessings, including livestock, providing meat, milk, and materials, crops and vegetation for sustenance, rain cycles that revive dead earth, ships that traverse seas carrying goods, mountains as stabilizers, night and day alternation, celestial bodies for navigation, and innumerable other bounties. The text emphasizes human ingratitude despite receiving countless benefits, contrasting natural creation's obedience to divine command with human tendency toward disbelief and denial. Verses also address resurrection, dietary laws, migration for faith when persecution becomes unbearable, and proper conduct in debate and argumentation. The surah served to direct attention toward observable reality as evidence for purposeful creation, encouraging reflection on the intricate systems and interdependencies in nature that sustain human life, with special emphasis on phenomena like honey production that even 7th century audiences could observe directly. Al-Isra. Al-Isra, the night journey, comprises 111 verses revealed in late Mecca and describes the miraculous night journey where Prophet Muhammad was transported from Mecca to Jerusalem and then ascended through the heavens, according to Islamic tradition. The opening verse references the journey to the farthest mosque, identified by Muslims as Al-Aqsa Mosque in Jerusalem, establishing that city's significance in Islamic theology as the third holiest site after Mecca and Medina. Traditional accounts elaborated in hadith literature describe how the prophet traveled on a creature called Buraq, met previous prophets including Abraham, Moses, and Jesus in the heavens, and received the commandment of 5 daily prayers, which originally numbered 50, but were reduced through Moses' advice to request lightening of the burden. Historical sources generally place this event around 621 CE during a particularly difficult period following the deaths of the prophet's wife Khadijah and uncle Abu Talib, with the journey serving to strengthen and console him. Beyond the night journey narrative, the surah contains ethical commandments paralleling the biblical 10 commandments, including honoring parents, fair treatment of orphans, fulfilling contracts, honest commerce, and avoiding arrogance. The text addresses Quranic revelation itself, challenging opponents to produce something comparable if they doubt its divine origin, and discusses free will, accountability, and the consequences of deeds in the afterlife. Al-Kahf. Al-Kahf, the cave, contains 110 verses revealed during the Middle Meccan period and uniquely presents 4 distinct narratives: the companions of the cave, the parable of 2 gardens, Moses' journey with the mysterious teacher Al-Hijr, and Dhul-Qarnayn's travels to Earth's boundaries. The surah takes its name from the story of young believers who fled religious persecution by hiding in a cave where God caused them to sleep for an extended period, with verse 25 stating they remained there for 300 years, or 309 according to lunar calculation. This narrative parallels the Christian legend of the 7 sleepers of Ephesus, young men who allegedly slept for centuries during Roman persecution, though Islamic and Christian versions contain significant differences in detail and theological emphasis. Islamic tradition strongly recommends reciting this surah every Friday, with various hadith attributing special protection and blessings to those who memorize or regularly read it. The Moses and Al-Hijr story presents a mysterious figure teaching Moses about divine wisdom beyond human comprehension, through actions that initially appear wrong but serve greater purposes, emphasizing humility in knowledge and trust in divine wisdom. The Dhul-Qarnayn narrative describes a righteous ruler who traveled to where the sun sets and rises according to the perspective of the account, ultimately building a barrier against the destructive forces of Gog and Magog, who will break through near the end times, according to Islamic eschatology. Maryam. Maryam, named after Mary, mother of Jesus, contains 98 verses revealed during the Middle Meccan period, and is the only surah in the Quran named after a woman, reflecting her elevated status in Islamic tradition as the most honored woman in history. The surah provides the most detailed Quranic account of Jesus' virgin birth, describing how Mary withdrew from her family to an eastern location where the angel Gabriel appeared in human form and announced she would bear a son despite having no husband. The narrative recounts her labor pains beneath a palm tree, where she was divinely instructed to shake the trunk, causing fresh dates to fall for nourishment, and a stream appeared at her feet, providing water. According to the account, when Mary returned to her people carrying the infant, they accused her of immorality, but the newborn Jesus miraculously spoke from the cradle, defending his mother's honor and declaring himself a prophet of God. The surah explicitly denies Jesus' divinity and the Christian doctrine of God having a son, stating such beliefs are incompatible with divine transcendence and majesty. Additional narratives include the elderly priest Zechariah receiving news of his son, John the Baptist's birth despite his wife's barrenness, and Abraham's debate with his idol-worshipping father, Azar. The extensive treatment of Jesus and Mary, combined with clear theological distinctions from Christian doctrine, makes this surah particularly significant in interfaith discussions and Islamic Christology. Taha. Taha comprises 135 verses revealed during the Middle Meccan period and opens with two mysterious Arabic letters whose meaning remains debated among scholars, similar to other Quranic chapters, beginning with such disconnected letters. The surah presents an extensive narrative of Moses, including his call at the burning bush on Mount Sinai, his request for his brother Aaron as assistant, his confrontation with Pharaoh and the Egyptian court magicians, the parting of the sea, and the golden calf incident during Moses' absence on the mountain. Detailed dialogue captures Moses' initial reluctance to accept prophethood due to a speech impediment, possibly a stutter, and his request that Aaron accompany him as a more eloquent spokesman. The encounter with Pharaoh's magicians proves pivotal when Moses' staff transforms into a serpent that consumes the illusory serpents created by the magicians' tricks, leading to their immediate conversion despite Pharaoh's threats of execution by crucifixion and amputation. The golden calf episode describes how the Israelites, influenced by a man named As-Samiri during Moses' 40-day absence, created an idol from melted jewelry that produced a lowing sound, leading to Moses' anger upon return and the subsequent community repentance. The surah also includes Adam's creation story and his disobedience in paradise, drawing parallels between Adam's mistake and human tendency toward forgetfulness and error, establishing the pattern of sin, repentance, and divine mercy. Al-Anbiya. Al-Anbiya, the prophets, contains 112 verses revealed during the late Meccan period and rapidly surveys 16 different prophets, providing brief accounts that emphasize different aspects of faith, patience, and divine intervention across various trials. The prophets mentioned include Noah, Abraham, Lot, Isaac, Jacob, Joseph, Moses, Aaron, David, Solomon, Job, Ishmael, Idris, Dulkifl, Jonah, and Zechariah, making it one of the most comprehensive catalogs of prophetic figures in a single surah. The narrative describes Abraham being thrown into fire by his people after destroying their idols, with God commanding the flames to become cool and safe for him, demonstrating divine power to override natural laws when protecting righteous servants. Solomon's story includes his ability to understand animal communication, control winds for transportation, and command jinn to perform labor, with one account describing an army of jinn, humans, and birds assembled under his leadership. Job's patience during extreme suffering receives brief but powerful treatment, showing his perseverance through loss of health, wealth, and family, while maintaining faith and trust in divine wisdom. Verse 30 has attracted modern attention for describing the heavens and earth as being joined together before God separated them, which, some contemporary Muslim scholars interpret as consistent with Big Bang cosmology, though medieval commentators understood it differently through the knowledge frameworks of their time. Al-Hajj. Al-Hajj, the pilgrimage, contains 78 verses, with the unusual characteristic of including both Meccan and Medinan passages within a single surah, as most chapters were revealed entirely in one location or the other. The surah describes rituals of the Hajj pilgrimage, including circumambulation of the Kaaba, running between the hills of Safa and Marwa, commemorating Hagar's search for water, standing at the plain of Arafat, and the animal sacrifice during Eid al-Adha festival. Verse 39 is historically significant, as it contains the first Quranic permission for Muslims to fight in self-defense, marking the transition from passive endurance of persecution in Mecca to authorized armed resistance after migration to Medina, when survival required defensive capability. The text emphasizes that the Kaaba was established as a sanctuary for all humanity since the time of Abraham, not as exclusive property of any tribe or nation, challenging the Meccan Quraysh's claim to monopolistic control over the site. Sacrifice of livestock during pilgrimage receives detailed treatment with clarification that neither the meat nor blood reaches God, but rather the piety and devotion of the person making the offering holds spiritual value. Verse 67 states that God has appointed for every nation particular rites and ceremonies, which some scholars interpret as acknowledgement of religious diversity and different valid paths to the divine, though others understand it as referring only to variations in sacrificial practices among believing communities throughout history. Al-Mu'minun. Al-Mu'minun, the believers, comprises 118 verses revealed during the Middle Meccan period, and opens with a detailed description of true believers' characteristics, including those who guard their prayers, avoid vain talk, give regular charity, maintain sexual purity except with lawful spouses, fulfill trusts and covenants, and testify truthfully. The surah presents these qualities as defining markers of successful believers who will inherit paradise and dwell therein eternally, establishing an ethical framework for Muslim character development. Verses 12 through 14 contain descriptions of human embryological development that have generated extensive discussion, describing stages where humans are created from clay extract, then placed as a drop in secure lodging, transformed into a clinging clot, then a lump of flesh, then bones clothed with flesh, before God brings forth another creation. Modern Muslim scholars have debated whether these descriptions align with contemporary embryology, with some claiming remarkable prescience given 7th century limitations in biological knowledge, while others caution against reading modern science into ancient texts. The surah includes prophet narratives of Noah, Moses, and Jesus, emphasizing the consistent message of monotheism across different eras and regions. Extended treatment of resurrection addresses skeptics who doubted bodily return after death and decomposition, using analogies of earth reviving after rain to demonstrate divine power to recreate human bodies for final judgment and accountability. An-Nur. An-Nur, the light, contains 64 verses revealed in Medina and addresses social ethics, particularly laws concerning false accusations of adultery and the protection of reputation and honor. The surah establishes that anyone accusing a chaste person of adultery must produce 4 eyewitnesses to the act itself, an evidential standard so high it effectively protects against slander, while making conviction for adultery extremely difficult unless confession occurs. Historical context includes the incident of the Ifk, when Prophet Muhammad's wife, Aisha, was falsely accused of impropriety after becoming separated from a caravan and returning accompanied by a young man who had found her, leading to weeks of community gossip before revelation declared her innocence. Verse 35, known as the Verse of Light, presents an elaborate metaphor comparing divine guidance to a lamp within a niche, the lamp enclosed in glass, like a brilliant star, lit from blessed olive oil that glows even without fire touching it, with light upon light illuminating the way for those God guides. The surah establishes etiquette for entering homes, requiring permission before entry, even from family members, protecting household privacy, especially during rest times, when people may be in states of undress or engaged in private activities. Regulations on modesty and lowering gazes apply to both men and women, though specific details of dress code receive more attention for women, including covering beauty, except what normally appears, and drawing veils over their chests. Al-Furqan. Al-Furqan, the Criterion, comprises 77 verses revealed during the Middle Meccan period and takes its name from the concept of the Quran serving as a criterion or standard for distinguishing truth from falsehood, right from wrong, and guidance from error. The surah responds to various accusations against the Quran and Prophet Muhammad, including claims that he fabricated the revelation, that it consisted of ancient legends dictated to him by others, or that he should have received a more spectacular form of prophecy, such as an accompanying angel visible to all or treasure descending from heaven. Verses defend the gradual revelation of the Quran over approximately 23 years, rather than all at once, explaining that this piecemeal approach allowed for contextualized guidance, addressing specific situations as they arose and made memorization and implementation more manageable for the community. The text presents natural phenomena, including the water cycle, barriers between fresh and salt water in estuaries, and the alternation of night and day as signs of purposeful design and divine mercy providing for human needs. Descriptions of the servants of the Most Merciful paint a picture of ideal believers who walk humbly on earth, respond to ignorant people with peace, spend nights in prostration and standing prayer, give charity moderately between extravagance and miserliness, avoid major sins, and when reminded of divine signs, do not turn away deaf and blind, but reflect with understanding and gratitude. Early Meccan Surahs. The early Meccan Surahs, numbered 26 through 37 in traditional Quran arrangement, represent some of the earliest revelations received by Prophet Muhammad during the initial years of his mission in Mecca, when the Muslim community was small, persecuted, and facing intense opposition from polytheistic society. These 12 surahs include Ash-Shu'ara, An-Nahl, Al-Qasas, Al-Ankabut, Ar-Rum, Luqman, As-Sajda, Al-Ahzab, Saba, Fatir, Yasin, and As-Safat, sharing common characteristics of relatively short length, powerful rhythmic structure, vivid imagery, and emphasis on fundamental theological concepts, including monotheism, resurrection, and divine judgment. The content focuses heavily on afterlife realities, with graphic descriptions of paradise and hellfire, warnings about consequences of disbelief, and encouragement for the Prophet and early believers enduring mockery and persecution from Meccan leadership. Natural phenomena appear frequently as signs pointing toward a creator, including spider webs representing the fragility of false reliance, ants communicating in their valley, demonstrating divine wisdom in creation, and celestial bodies following ordained paths. Prophet stories serve to console and encourage by showing historical precedent where messengers faced rejection, yet truth ultimately prevailed, with particular attention to poets who wander in every valley speaking what they do not practice, contrasted with those who believe and do righteous deeds. Mid-Meccan Surahs. The Mid-Meccan Surahs, spanning numbers 38 through 49 in standard arrangement, were revealed during the middle period of the Meccan phase when opposition to Islam had intensified, but the community continued growing despite persecution and social ostracism. This group of 12 surahs includes Sad, Az-Zumar, Ghafir, Fusilat, Ash-Shura, Az-Zukhruf, Ad-Dukhan, Al-Jathiyah, Al-Ahqaf, Muhammad, Al-Fath, Al-Hujurat, Qaf, Ad-Dariyat, and At-Tur, demonstrating increased theological sophistication and longer, more developed argumentation compared to earlier revelations. These chapters emphasize divine attributes extensively, presenting God's power, mercy, wisdom, and justice through increasingly complex reasoning and evidence from creation, history, and human nature. The principle of consultation receives important treatment, establishing that believers should conduct their affairs through mutual consultation and shared decision-making rather than autocratic rule. Az-Zumar organizes humanity into groups based on faith and deeds, while Al-Fath celebrates the Treaty of Hudaybiyah as a clear victory despite appearing as a compromise, demonstrating divine wisdom in apparent setbacks. Vivid imagery includes smoke rising to indicate apocalyptic events, sand dunes where ancient peoples built great civilizations before destruction, scattering winds demonstrating divine power, and Mount Sinai where Moses received revelation, all serving to strengthen believers' resolve during difficult circumstances. Late Meccan Surahs. The late Meccan Surahs, numbered 50 through 60 in Quranic arrangement, were revealed during the final years in Mecca before the migration to Medina, when persecution had reached its peak and immigration was imminent. This group includes An-Najm, Al-Qamar, Ar-Rahman, Al-Waqi'ah, Al-Hadid, Al-Mujadila, Al-Hashr, and Al-Mumtahana, showing transition toward more universal messages and preparation for the establishment of an Islamic state. An-Najm describes a profound spiritual experience of the Prophet, while Al-Qamar narrates the splitting of the moon as a sign, an event mentioned in Hadith literature, though debated among scholars regarding its literal occurrence versus metaphorical interpretation. Ar-Rahman stands out for its repeated refrain, "Which of the favors of your Lord will you deny?" appearing 31 times throughout the surah, creating powerful, rhythmic emphasis on divine blessings often taken for granted. Al-Waqi'ah divides humanity into three distinct groups in the afterlife: those brought near to God enjoying the highest paradise, companions of the right hand in standard paradise, and companions of the left hand facing punishment, providing detailed descriptions of each group's fate. Cosmic imagery intensifies with stars setting, barriers between fresh and salt water meeting, but not mixing, iron being sent down, and balanced scales weighing deeds with absolute precision, all reinforcing themes of divine power, justice, and the approaching day of accountability. Early Medinan Surahs. The early Medinan Surahs, spanning numbers 61 through 66, were revealed during the first years after the migration to Medina in 622 CE, when the Muslim community transitioned from persecuted minority to established society requiring legal frameworks and institutional structures. These 6 surahs include As-Saf, Al-Jumu'ah, Al-Munafiqun, At-Taghabun, At-Talaq, and At-Tahrim, addressing practical concerns of community organization, legal regulations, and internal challenges from hypocrites who outwardly professed Islam while secretly opposing it. As-Saf emphasizes believers standing in firm ranks during battle like a solid structure, establishing military discipline and unity as essential qualities for survival and success. Al-Jumu'ah institutes the Friday congregational prayer as a weekly gathering for worship and community cohesion, requiring believers to cease commerce and assemble when the call to prayer sounds, then resuming normal activities afterward. Al-Munafiqun exposes characteristics of hypocrites who undermined community through false pledges, discouragement of charity, and attempts to create division, providing believers with tools to identify and protect against internal threats more dangerous than external enemies. At-Talaq establishes detailed divorce regulations, including waiting periods before remarriage to determine pregnancy, housing and maintenance obligations during this interim, and witnessing requirements to formalize proceedings, creating legal protections, particularly for divorced women in vulnerable positions. Short, powerful surahs. Short, powerful surahs, numbered 67 through 77, represent diverse revelation periods, but share compact length, memorable rhythms, and concentrated thematic messages delivered with extraordinary linguistic efficiency and impact. This group includes Al-Mulk, Al-Qalam, Al-Haqqa, Al-Ma'arij, Nur, Al-Jinn, Al-Muzammil, Al-Muddathir, Al-Qiyamah, Al-Insan, and Al-Mursalat, often featuring vivid afterlife imagery and rapid-fire rhetorical questions that challenge listeners to reflect on creation, purpose, and ultimate accountability. Al-Mulk, meaning the dominion, describes God's sovereign control over all creation with layers of heavens, built without visible supports or imperfections, challenging observers to look repeatedly without finding any flaws. Surah An-Nur recounts the prophet Noah's 950-year mission, calling his people to monotheism, demonstrating extreme patience in prophecy despite continuous rejection across multiple generations until divine judgment finally came through the Great Flood. Al-Jinn reveals that jinn, invisible beings created from smokeless fire according to Islamic theology, listened to Quranic recitation, and some believed while others remained rebellious, indicating the message extends beyond humanity alone. Al-Muzammil and Al-Mudaththir address the prophet directly using epithets, the enshrouded one and the cloaked one, providing instructions for night prayer, public preaching, and preparation for the immense responsibility of prophethood during its earliest, most vulnerable phase. If you want to see more, click the video on screen now.